Welcome back. Here today with an old friend of the show, Andy Schack from Clear Choice Satellite and Communication. Andy's been on in the past talking about all things internet, all things satellite television. If you're less than satisfied with perhaps the non-stellar customer service you're receiving from Ma Bell or now AT&T, or if you have questions or concerns, if you're getting the very best deal out there in television service and internet connectivity, this is a show of which you are probably going to want to pay attention to. And Andy's going to give you some ideas, food for thought, if you will, on what to take into consideration when you make your next internet access choice. We'll be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, we're in downtown Chipey, Florida today, here with Andy Schack. Andy, no stranger to the show, has been on before talking about internet service, talking about satellite television reception. Andy, thanks for taking the time. I caught you after closing hours today because the phone rings off the hook here, and with good reason. Let's talk a little bit about the nuts and the bolts.
Sure.
I obviously have the luxury of having come from our Kiwanis meeting a couple days ago where you addressed us and talked about it. So I got to see your bio, and I know some of this, got to learn more about you. But talk a little bit about yourself, how you got into this business, and what Andy Schack and Clear Choice is all about.
Sure. Well, I've always been into electronics. Even back when I was in high school, I was kind of the guy everybody went to get anything done. And then shortly after high school, I opened up the Radio Shack over here in Chipey. That was back in September of 1984. Always did well with it. People seemed to like dealing with me because I could explain things. I always tried to explain things where people could understand it, because a lot of times technology can be a little scary to a lot of people. So if you can make them understand it, feel comfortable with it, they're more comfortable using it. Sold it back in 1997, shortly before my first daughter, Megan, was born, and then opened up Clear Choice Satellite. And honestly, at first, I thought, well, these little dishes, they might be able to put in a few, it'd be good side business. I had no idea how big the market was going to get. Back then, the idea of people having satellite dishes at their house that they could get hundreds of channels, be able to use for internet and everything was just simply unheard of. But technology's moved along.
Yeah, and there's a lot of questions out there, and we're going to attempt to address some of those before this show is over. But let's go back to what you started off saying. Radio Shack, at one time, the preeminent source for not just hardware, but for information. Some of the IBM Tandy computers were originally sold through Radio Shack, and it was the place to go. It derived its name from the old ham Radio Shack,
right.
The guy who, with a soldering iron and kind of like a MacGyver, who could pretty much do anything electronically. When you went into a Radio Shack, there was literally everything from diodes and resistors and transistors all the way up to ultimately cell phones and stereo systems and all of that kind of stuff. What made you get out of, or make the change and get out of the Radio Shack business?
Actually, I saw kind of technology changing. I kind of figured Radio Shack states were a little bit numbered. The market was changing, things were changing, and I just thought I wanted to try something else for a while. But I'm good at electronics, and so it didn't take me too long to just get right back into it again. I did repair work for a short period of time, repairing dental instruments, and I enjoyed the work, but I just like electronics, so I just fell right back into it.
Yeah, and you're a people person. So doing what you do now, and I'm sure then too, you get to talk to a lot of people.
Right.
And you are a good teacher. You have a way about you when you explain something that you don't dumb it down. You kind of gauge the response that you're getting. But I've seen you talk to lots of people, inclusive of myself, and you make things interesting enough that you want to learn about it without making it boring. You probably have a career in teaching at some point as well. Radio Shack stuck around another, 7 years or so after you
Yeah,
sold
stuck
it?
around for quite a bit longer. Chris Mitchell, the guy I sold it to, he actually even ventured off, started doing more into home security camera systems, surveillance cameras, home theater, things like that. And the Radio Shack was actually more or less just something he kind of had to put up with. And so when he moved to his new location on Highway 90, he let the franchise go. And of course, just I think about 2 weeks ago, Radio Shack announced massive closings all across the country. And I've had people ask me, they said, because people know, they think of me still as the Radio Shack guy. And I've had people ask me, you know, how I felt about it, and did it surprise me that Radio Shack was closing so many of their stores. And I always tell them, I say, well, when's the last time you told somebody, well, go to Radio Shack? You know, people just don't have to anymore. People don't repair things anymore. The days of people coming and buying a soldering iron and a circuit board and sitting down and actually building something, it's disappeared, kind of the way the Heath kits. Heath kits were huge in the 60s and 70s. Well, if you say Heath kit to people nowadays, they probably think you're talking about maybe making a chocolate bar, like you get, you know, components to make a chocolate bar or something. So, you know, things change, times change, technology changes, and one thing I've learned, there's no sense in stomping your feet and fussing about it. Best thing to do is figure out how to make a living at it.
Yeah, and much of what was sold in Radio Shack in the old days, you can now get in Walmart,
yes.
Electronically speaking. As you point out, we don't repair electronics anymore. A $69 DVD player, we simply throw away after a couple of years and buy a new one. And as you pointed out at the Qantas meeting the other day, typically it's going to be upgraded. There are going to be more features to it, right. And it's going to be well worth replacing it at that time. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, internet service.
Sure.
We were lucky enough to meet you at the right time. We tell the story a lot where we had Main Street Broadband when it first came to Chipey. I think I sold a lot of it because I told people in glowing terms how great it was, how fast it was, how inexpensive it was, and it was all of those things. Unfortunately, its days were numbered, and ultimately the Department of Agriculture didn't renew a loan that the people who owned Main Street Broadband were counting on to make it happen in the simplest of terms, and it went away. Interesting story from a customer service point of view is that I called the guy who installed it for me, who is still in the business here in this region, and when I said, hey, my internet service is out, his response to me was, yeah, I'm glad I didn't sell more of it. To which I replied, wrong answer. You know, I want you to give me some alternatives, and I got nothing. So I immediately picked up the phone, knew about you, had already done business with him before I had met you, picked up the phone, or I dropped by, I guess, your other location on 90, and we talked probably for an hour and a half. I don't think I've ever spoken to you when we had a brief conversation. It's always been, usually, because we're into a lot of the same things. But you gave me my options, and we ended up going with a dish product and was well satisfied. But when the new Exceed came out, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, that is what I really want to tell people about right now. I don't think that anybody who drives a car or who gets out of their house in any way, shape, or form has failed to see the Exceed signs. They're everywhere. Lots of advertising on television, lots of advertising in print, even on the radio. I'm going to let you explain what Exceed is all about.
Sure. Exceed is a product put up by a company called Viasat. They were the original parent company of Wild Blue Internet Service. And as technology's changed, the product they can deliver has changed a whole lot. It used to be that the product that we sold under Wild Blue, it was good, but as people got to where they want to do more and more with the internet, and as websites have changed. It used to be you clicked on a website like for WJHD Channel 7 in Panama City, you would just be reading your news story. Now you're going to have all different things that want to open up where it's playing the Doppler radar, you're watching their news. So what used to count for good internet now just simply won't work anymore. And Exceed's now come out with a product that works real well. They give unlimited internet, web surfing, and email to all customers. So even if a customer goes with a smaller package, most people are familiar with if you have like a 5 or 10 gig limit, two things happen when you hit that limit. Either your service is basically almost shut off, or you're charged typically about $15 per gig going over, which a lot of you parents have been hit with rather large bills when the kids do a little bit too much on YouTube. Well, with Exceed, if a customer has, like, let's say the 5 or the 20 gig plan, that data allotment, the 5 or 20 gigs, is for large file transfers or video streaming. They actually segregate out what you're doing with the internet. So even if grandma and grandpa have the 5 gig plan, grandkids come over for Thanksgiving and boom, they blow through their 5 gigs, they still have full speed on their email and web surfing. So they're going and checking their emails, reading news, going to Facebook, things like that, they're not going to notice any degradation in speed, and their bill's not going to be increased. But we also have a product for people who do want to do a lot of video streaming. We have the package that they call it the virtually unlimited package. It's got what they call a soft cap of 150 gigs, which means that they may, at their discretion, they may contact the customer if they go over 150 gigs to ask them to please kind of, tamp it down, maybe adjust their video quality settings. A lot of people aren't familiar that you can actually adjust video settings. Otherwise, if you go to a company like Netflix's website and you click play on a movie, it's going to test your bandwidth connection, and it's going to send the video quality to you the highest possible. A lot of customers have found they can go and adjust that video setting down, notice no degradation in picture quality, but yet their bandwidth usage is dropped dramatically. Another real great thing with Exceed is they offer a very fast service, 12 megs down, 3 megs up. What that means is I've talked with a lot of customers, and they'll say when they're using their computer, if their kids get online, with maybe a couple tablets, that all of a sudden, next thing they know, nobody can do anything. It's like you put any kind of a load on it all and it just bogs down. With Exceed, I've got several places where people have 4, 5, even 6 devices on at the same time, and there's no degradation in speed or quality.
Yeah, I had the original Exceed product, and I think it had a 15 gigabyte cap for the month. We didn't have a month when we didn't have upwards of $100 additional charge on top of the $69 or $79 or whatever it cost, which in itself I didn't have a problem with, that the aggregate of the cost, but I never knew what my bill was going to be, and I never knew if I was going to have enough, and I was always afraid of running out in the middle of a file transfer or something like that. And I'd put a big file on at night, and if I should reach that threshold by somewhere in the middle of the night when I came back the next morning, it hadn't uploaded. It was still sitting there chugging away. We obviously wanted a better product, and I was ready to go with cable, even though I had many people admonished me that our local cable is dicey at best. It fluctuates wildly in its speed. If you're just using it for television, it's not that bad, although you might experience outages when the weather's bad or when they have a cable interruption. But for internet purposes, from what I understood, it just simply would not take care of our problems. We were looking at moving in order to be able to get to some place that gave us good internet service, because our business is based on file transfers, on video files, very large ones, especially for our television show. So if we don't have upwards of 300 to 500 gigabytes a month capacity, we simply can't operate. Enter the new Exceed. I came and talked to you at the right time. You had an initial 6-month special package, $69. At the end of 6 months, it would go up to $99, and it was that virtually unlimited package. You say 12 and 3, 12 down, 3 up. We've experienced much quicker speeds than that, upwards of 25 megabytes down. So that's to us, that's huge.